Hi there, BookTube, and this is Roz doing something that I usually do at the end of the month, and this is about a week late because last weekend I was celebrating the end of October with my tea party. But what I've been trying to do at the end of each month is kind of sum up my delights, discoveries, and any disappointments of the month, and then a little bit of a TBR for the month ahead as well. So let's talk about October. Now this is going to be fairly swift and light touch because most of the things I read in October I actually got to talk about already in a video, particularly because this month was Victober, and I read several things for the sort of Victorian literature prompts, and I've done a few things about that. But the first thing that I read this month was definitely a delight, and that was Three Dreams in the Key of G by Nash. And I did a whole video about this, so I won't talk about it at length. But Marc is a fellow booktuber, and but also a very interesting author. And if you'd like to read a book by a booktuber and you're not afraid of something a bit experimental, I really recommend his book. He enjoys playing with words. It's a book of ideas, but it's also a book with real kind of humanity as well. So a strong recommend, and definitely, yeah, got the month off to a brilliant start. The first kind of discovery of the month for me, in fact, perhaps really the only discovery, was reading Little Eyes by Samanta Schweblin, and I did a Scully Dandling video about that. She's from Argentina. It's not a perfect book, as I say in my kind of review, but there's something about it that really made me want to read more by that author. It's her first full novel, and I've already got hold of Fever Dream, her sort of novella that she wrote before, and I'm planning to read that kind of at Christmas. So yeah, definitely a positive discovery, Samanta Schweblin. Now, strangely enough, the only disappointment of this month, I would say, it's a relative disappointment. It's not a full disappointment, but to explain, I read Felix Holt, The Radical by George Eliot this month. Now, if you follow this channel at all, you probably know that if I'm pushed to name my favourite book ever, I will say Middlemarch, and if I'm pushed to name my favourite author, well, I might sometimes say Jane Austen, but generally I'd probably say George Eliot. But I'm conscious that I've read all of Austen's major works, but I haven't read all of Eliot's, and I'm kind of working my way through them, as it were. And Felix Holt was a new Eliot novel for me, and it's a brilliant book. You know, she's a superb writer, but I didn't love it the way I love Middlemarch or Silas Marner, say. I didn't even enjoy it as much as I enjoy, say, Romola or Mill on the Floss. It's a good book, and yet it didn't somehow make my heart sing the way Middlemarch does. So in that sense, I guess it's a disappointment, given that George Eliot is you know, like my favourite author, should we say. I actually read Felix Holt almost as a pair with North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, North and South is a reread for me, but a reread of something that I read when I was probably about 14, so, you know, big distance in time. And I wanted to read both of those because they're both kind of political novels, and you could really, you know, they're novels that they look at ideas, look at the politics of the time, but combine that with a love story, and you could really see what Eliot was trying to do in Felix Holt, you know, and it was interesting what she was trying to do, and really sort of, you know, she was trying to set up Felix Holt as a political hero, not necessarily all that likeable, but yet somehow morally and politically pure in contrast with the other radical in the book, who's a kind of a toff, rich man who decides to stand for Parliament for the Whig Party as a radical politician, but it's maybe not really there in his heart, and he's set up as a bit almost not a fraud. It's genuine, but yeah, I mean, he doesn't live it the way Felix does. Felix chooses to sort of shape his life around his beliefs. The love story, you kind of worry about Esther, the main female character, that she ends up kind of hitching her future to Felix, because although it's portrayed as something that is very sort of inspiring for her, you actually feel like he's so determined to shape his life by his sort of political and social beliefs that even though he obviously loves her, you feel like, oh, that's a risky choice, dear, you know. She's a good character though, and in many ways both Felix Holt and North and South are most successful as novels in what they show or explore about the position of women and the sort of limited choices maybe open to mid-Victorian kind of women, particularly in terms of marriage, middle-class women. So two books that I enjoyed, but yeah, say a relative disappointment, Felix Holt. The two, but I definitely enjoyed rereading North and South, but it didn't absolutely blow me away. I kind of hoped that I would go back to Gaskell and be swept off my feet by it in the way that I was as a teenager, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't sort of the peak of my month. Now, the peak of my month, I would say, is two things. Well, one is an odd thing to describe as a peak, because I read selected poems of Thomas Hardy, which was unremittingly miserable, more or less, but I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was an enormous, if miserable, pleasure. But the absolute sort of top book of my month was reading Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and I'm just a sucker for Dickens. He draws me in, and just I'm sucked into the story, the characters, you know, the drive of the plot, the humour, the pathos. Yeah, what, you know, when I read something like Bleak House, I think, why don't I read Dickens all the time? The other disappointment, I suppose, of October for me was that I didn't get to read a new Hardy or a new Trollope this October. But, you know, one can read Victorian literature in other months, I have to remind myself, and I will get to some more of those soon. So that was all the books that I finished in October. Two books I started and are carrying over into November. One of those is this one, The Housekeeper's Tale, and I started that in October because it's a book about 5 housekeepers in English country houses, and the first 2 of the 5 were Victorian housekeepers, so I read those for October, but I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the book, the sort of Edwardian and early 20th century housekeepers, as one of my non-fiction November choices. So I'm already kind of on my way through my first non-fiction November book. The second one that I started, only read a bit of, was For All the Tea in China by Sarah Rose, which is a book about tea, and I embarked on that as a bit of kind of research, I guess, for making the Victorian tea party video that I did for celebrating the end of October, and I enjoyed the bits of it I read so much about Robert Fortune and going off to try and steal in the 1840s, steal the secrets of tea from China on behalf of the East India Company, that I'm planning to make that another of my non-fiction November reads. So this one is going to be for the prompt time. The T one is for the prompt discovery. But my third non-fiction November read is, I think, the book that I'm most excited about reading this month, and that is Unspeakable, the story of Junius Wilson. It's another book written by a booktuber, well, jointly written by Susan Burch and Hannah Joyner of Hannah's Books. And part of the reason why I'm so excited about reading this is that it's by Hannah, who is, if you're not already subscribed to Hannah, you must, you should. I can't believe anyone watching this isn't, but if not, do. She celebrated her 1,000th subscriber this week, and very well deserved that is. The second reason why I'm really excited to be reading it is the subject matter, because it's sad, tough, but really interesting, because it's about a black deaf man from North Carolina who was falsely accused of attempted rape, and basically committed to an asylum where he lived for the next, well, like basically his whole life. He was a teenager when he went there, and yeah, it's already, just a couple of chapters in, I'm learning so much about the sort of America around the turn of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, about the Jim Crow kind of rules, sort of, yeah, well, I will talk more about it, no doubt. But the third reason why I'm really excited about it is because it's a buddy read that I'm doing with Justin the Ghost Reader, Sean the Book Maniac, who's organising us. He's very good at that, Sean. Thank you, Sean. Brian Bookish, and lovely Alba of Seriella. So it's going to be a really enjoyable experience, I hope. And I'm sure I will be talking about it much more. The other lovely buddy read that I'm starting in November but not expecting to finish is Paradise Lost, which I said earlier in the year was one of those things that I feel I ought to have read and really wanted to read, but had been a bit intimidated by. And Alan of Big Hard Books and Classics said, let's do it as a buddy read. And then Madeline of Made with Books is joining us too. And we're going to work our way through it slowly over the next sort of 3 months, I think. So expect to hear more of that. But it is, I'm one book in. It has 12 books, this poem, and I'm already so thrilled to be reading this and thinking, why have I not kind of picked it up before? The words, people, they're magic words. Oh, let me give you my favourite line so far. It's so gorgeous. Where are we? It's talking about like Satan and all the other fallen angels are in hell, and the description of hell is unbelievable. It's a dungeon horrible on all sides round, as one great furnace flamed, yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible. I mean, blimey, that's the English language at its best, isn't it? So, that's some of my November plans. What else am I planning in November? I've got a Scallydandle to do. I'm already part way through it, reading a book from Iran. It's The Enlightenment of the Greengage tea by Shokoofeh. Oh, I always get this wrong. Her surname's Azar, and I can't get her first name right, and I should have practiced this. Shokoofeh Azar, and it's kind of like the story of the Iranian Revolution through the experience of one family, and it's a bit kind of spooky and ghosty, fable-like. It's great. I'll be sure to be talking more about that. The other, apart from non-fiction November, the other sort of readathon I'm taking part in this month is Indigathon, which is about reading Indigenous writers from the Americas and elsewhere. And one of my kind of plans for that is to read Louise Erdrich's Love Medicine. it's a kind of taking something off my shelf, something that I've been meaning to read for a while. I've read a few of her books. They never fail to please, let's say. She's just a very good writer. But this is I've read a couple of her recent books, and this is one of her early ones. So I'm looking forward to that. My other choice is a book from New Zealand. Because one of the Indigathon prompts is, although it's kind of organised by American writers of sort of Native American sort of background, to encourage us all to, and it's kind of relates to the American kind of like Native American Heritage Month. But one of their prompts is to read something by an Indigenous writer from another country, and one of the things that I've been doing in my sort of scally-dandle of reading books from around the world is going back to countries where I've read some, maybe many books by people of the sort of white settler origin, places like Australia, Canada, America, New Zealand, all of those, and going back and trying to make sure that I've read some something by some Indigenous writers from that country. And so I'm grabbing the Indigathon sort of opportunity to read The Imaginary Lives of James Poneke by Tina Makareti from New Zealand. So that's all my definite plans. If I can, I shall fit in a fourth non-fiction November book to fulfill the fourth prompt. If I do, it'll be White Fragility, I think, which is something that's been in my mind to read for a while. And, you know, I may squeeze in a couple more. We'll see. But tell me about your November reading plans, whether that's non-fiction November or Indigathon or whatever else. And have a good month ahead.